to Bibliophiles Anonymous, episode 29. I'm Denise.
And I'm Jess.
And I'm back!
Yay!
Oh, it's so nice to actually be able to talk again, although there's probably some people who are not thrilled with that fact.
Well, I am.
Yeah.
Because, last week was sort of all over the place because I'm not good at being, directing this thing. You are.
Oh.
I'll leave that to you. No.
No, I thought you guys did great, and I was really happy that Tim and Rebecca could fill in like that. So
Yes.
it was a lot of fun. It sounded like a lot of fun anyway. So
Well, it was. And the hour that we talked after we finished recording was really fun.
Mhm.
When I thought Rebecca had killed Tim.
Uh-oh.
She's going to yell at me for saying that, but it was funny.
That's all right. So yeah, a big thanks to them because they really saved the show because there was no way that I was going to be able to do it. I couldn't even remotely talk. It was terrible. But for the most part, everybody in my house is back to being healthy again. So
Yay!
we're going to cross our fingers. We're going to knock on wood and make sure that it stays that way.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah, because I really don't want to get sick again. Not like that. I missed work for 2 days.
Wow.
You know how I've talked to you about my boss and how much they don't like having people out of work. And so, yeah, but they actually sent me home.
Wow.
They were like, you look awful. Go home. Feel better. I'm like, okay. But, yeah, so I'm back and hopefully mostly back to normal. And so let's get this show started. Oh, and at the end of the show, I will have an announcement. So stick around for that. But before we get to there, what have we been reading?
Nothing. Technically. I'm still trying to finish Queen of Sorcery. And I haven't read any on the third Symphony of Ages book lately. But I blame Big Bang Theory. Because I have season 1 through 4 on DVD, and I finally started watching them, and I've kind of got hung up on it, so I haven't been doing a lot of reading because I've been watching Big Bang Theory.
Well, I haven't been doing a lot of reading just because I've been doing a lot of sleeping.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've literally been coming home, even when I was at work, I've been coming home and just as soon as it's possible, as soon as homework is done and dinner's done and everything's done, the kids are in bed, I'm in bed. It's not been fun. But I did manage to finish book 3 of the Belgariad, which we're going to talk about today, Magician's Gambit. And for a while I was reading Queen of Sorcery and Magician's Gambit at the same time because I wanted to make sure to finish book 3, but I hadn't finished book 2. And you want to talk about trying to keep things chronologically in order? I was all over the place. I couldn't figure out which way was what, but I finally finished them and started back reading a little bit on Abortion, which I had gotten about halfway and then stopped because of trying to catch up with all of these. So
Yeah. Well, I didn't even start Magician's Gambit, but I have read it about a dozen times, and I have the ebook open on my computer right now, so.
Okay. Yeah, I think you'll probably be fine. I'm not too concerned with you.
Nah,
Yeah.
I'll be alright.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get started then. We are on book 3 of our Eddingspalooza.
Yay, Eddingspalooza.
So this book picks up pretty much right where Queen of Sorcery leaves off. They're
Yeah.
good like that, actually.
With Belgariad and Silk turning back up after being separated, and we get the story of how Belgariad broke his arm.
Right.
Which is pretty funny because, he's this almighty sorcerer, and
A tree falls on him.
Yeah, a tree fell on him. I mean, really?
Yeah. Well, they were trying to figure out if it was an accident or not because they were kind of dodging enemies all the way back from where they had gone. But there was also a volcano that had erupted, so everything was kind of chaos for a while.
Right. Of course, naturally, Polgara assumes the worst.
That's her job.
Yeah, well, that's what Polgara does. She assumes the worst.
Yep. But anyway, trying to, they were originally trying to follow the orb, but then Belgarath tells them, nope, we are heading to the Vale of Aldor.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, say what?
Yeah, Bulgaria. Why?
Wait, we're in the middle of something here, so why in the world are we going to completely go off course and go to the Vale? And Belgarath says, well, you know what? Alder told us to come, and I'm not going to start ignoring my master after thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
So we're going now, and that's just the way it is. Which leads us on to continuing our tour of the world of Belgariad. I think,
Yeah.
as you guys said last week, is that he creates this world with all of these countries, and then you will visit every single one of them, including the one that doesn't even really exist anymore,
Right.
which is Marigor.
Yep.
And we don't know that much about Marigor, really. We hear a little bit about it, but uh, they weren't originally going to go there, but they were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. There were enemies all around them, and they pretty much said, okay, well, the only option is to go through Marigor. And
Yeah.
nobody wanted to go through Marigor, especially not Princess Sinedra.
Well, considering Mara wanted to kill her
Yeah,
because she's Tolnedran, I wouldn't want to go either.
no. Well, let's tell a little bit about the Marags and what had happened to them. Mara, as you said, is the god of the Marags, and apparently there was some kind of mistranslation of one of their religious texts, and they became cannibals.
But it was ritualistic cannibalism. It wasn't like, they were eating their neighbors every day.
Right. So a lot of this, I think Belgarath says, a lot of it might have been smoothed over if there hadn't been the fact that their country was really, really rich with gold.
Yeah, like you could walk and look down in the streams in Marigor, and the bottoms of the stream beds would just be covered in gold.
Yeah.
And at this point, you've learned a little about the Tolnedrans because they've left Tolnedra, and you know that they're all greedy.
Extremely.
And they're very interested in money.
Uh-huh.
And that was kind of the center of the conflict between the Tolnedrans and the Marags, because the Tolnedrans wanted the gold. It was worthless to the Marags. They had a barter society. They didn't use money, so gold was worthless to them.
Right.
I mean, they didn't ornament themselves, so gold was worthless as jewelry. So that's kind of, I think Belgrade's probably right that it probably would have been looked over had it not been for, the acres and acres of gold.
Right. Because all of a sudden the Tolnedrans decide that, now this is all had happened, many years previous. But the
centuries ago.
Yeah, the Tolnedrans decided, well, we're going to stamp out this horrible cannibalism, and if we, happen to get some gold at the same time, then bully for us.
Yeah, pretty much.
And what ended up happening was the complete and total extermination of the Marags. And so, of course, their god was not particularly happy about that, and he basically made the entire land of Marigor haunted by all of the slaughtered Marags. And if you go in there, the ghosts basically will attack your mind and make you completely insane.
Right.
Which is pretty good retribution.
Well, yeah, because, Tolnedrans, being as greedy as they are, some of them are still not going to be able to resist the fact that all that gold is still there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they didn't get very much gold when they, took over or tried to take over Marigor. And so now there's all of this gold that's just basically sitting there, and they can't get to it because the spirit of Mara is just ready to attack. But they decide, our companions decide that their only option is to go through Marigor to get to the Vale. And as we said, nobody's really happy about this solution, but uh, Belgarath and Polgara do this thing where they kind of put everybody in this like sleep,
Yeah,
almost
like
like
a
a
trance kind of thing.
yeah. So they're still walking and well, they're riding horses, but they're still traveling through Marigor, but they're not awake while they're doing it.
Except Garion kind of wakes up
He's sort of awake, but he's sort of not.
because he has a very long conversation with that dry voice in his mind, and this is where we really start learning more about that voice, because it tells him basically, Garion has spent a lot of time with the phrase "why me,"
Oh yeah, all the time.
and the voice kind of explains that you have something that you have to do,
Mhm.
and that's why you're here. You're the only one who can do it.
Right.
And he doesn't really give Garion much more detail than that because apparently everybody just wants to keep him in the dark at this point.
That seems to be the thing in a lot of these stories. It's like, let's not explain anything to the main character so that they might actually make informed decisions. Let's watch them flounder around a little while, and then at the very end, we'll say, oh, yeah, by the way.
Yeah. That's kind of what they do here, because it's like, oh, yeah, by the way. And then this voice has a conversation with Belgarath as well, I think.
Yeah, he does, after they confront Mara. It takes a little while, because Belgarath doesn't realize that the voice is even there. But I did like how the voice was trying to explain basically what Garion's purpose is. And he kind of goes into a little bit about what the prophecies are. And he tries to explain it saying that, several years ago, many years ago, something happened that shouldn't have. And he uses this metaphor talking about if you're throwing a rock and the rock accidentally ricochets off of something, it could hit somebody's window, and that wasn't supposed to happen. But if you threw another rock and tried to hit the first one, you can knock it back the direction that it was supposed to go.
Right.
And basically, Garion is the second rock that's supposed to put everything back on track.
Right.
Which still doesn't really explain what's going on, but it gives Garion at least the idea that somebody knows what's going on, even if
it gives him some sort of frame of reference.
Right.
It's something he can kind of hold on to other than, what Polgara and Belgarath have been telling him.
Right.
Up to this point, which is not a lot.
Not really anything.
No. Well, I mean, at this point, he had his little hissy fit after burning Asherak about how he never wanted to use sorcery again, and Polgara's trying to explain to him why he needs to learn how to use it.
Right.
Because if you don't, then you're going to hurt somebody. But he wouldn't listen. He just thinks it's better if he just doesn't use it ever again. And after he has this talk with the voice, he kind of decides that he better learn what he's doing.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it, especially after, like you said, after he talked to the voice, is he starts realizing that even though he didn't choose this particular destiny, but there's still a lot riding on him. And I think you had said last week that there's certain things that happen throughout this series, and it just kind of keeps building and building. But when you start seeing just how important Garion really is.
Yeah.
Even though he doesn't really understand it yet, he knows something's up. He's starting to realize that he's not just, this farm boy who just happened to get whisked away on this trip. He's starting to realize that he has a purpose.
Yeah, that it has a lot more to do with him than he originally thought.
Yeah. But anyway, they finally do get to the Vale, and we should probably say what happens when they finally meet Mara, because Mara is not... He basically has taken over the main city in Marigor and filled it with ghosts, and basically relives the destruction of Maragor over and over again.
Yeah.
And because of that, he's pretty ticked off that they dared to bring a Tolnedrin into his realm. And
Yeah, he pitches a royal fit, like screaming and demanding that they let him have Sinedra.
yeah, and that's when the dry voice, which I guess is going to be its name because it never really has a name exactly.
Well, no, it's usually referred to as the dry voice, but it's actually the voice of the awareness of the prophecy.
Yeah,
Or something
like that.
Something like that. We just call it the voice of the prophecy most of the time.
Yeah, or the dry voice.
Yeah.
But that's when he steps in and basically says, "Look, Mara, I know you're still grieving, even though it's been centuries since this has happened, but there's more important things going on than your grief, and you need to. I mean, you're not going to get over it, but you at least need to get over it right now because you can't have Sinedra. We need her. She is tied to this purpose, and we can't leave her behind, and you're just going to have to deal with that." And eventually Mara does, although he's still not too happy.
Yeah. Well, eventually they kind of end up bribing him, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah. But they get to the Vale, and you meet some more of the sorcerers. You meet the twins, Belkira and Beltira.
Yes.
And you meet one of my favorite characters in the book, and that is Belden.
Yes, I love Belden.
Oh my gosh. He's this ugly, misshapen, disgusting little fellow who is dirty more often than not.
Depends on how long it's been since it rained.
Yeah. He is crass, he is vulgar, but yet he's, one of the strongest people that you'd ever met. And I love the fact that every time he and Polgara get together, they do nothing but exchange insults and try and be as creative with their insults as possible.
Yeah, because at first it really tears Dernick up.
Yeah.
Because he's insulting Polgara.
Yeah. He's like, "How can you let him talk like that?" And she's like, "It's just what we do."
Oh yeah, she grew up with him, and it's like she explains, that's kind of the way he shows affection. He knows that compliments would be lies.
Yeah. She's like, I can't give him a compliment. I mean, he is ugly and he knows it. So that's just the way we do it. And it's really sweet. I mean, he's one of the ones you don't realize what a sweetheart he is until much later because it's so easy to take everything he does right at face value. And he has this constant attitude and just snarky personality.
And he really likes to annoy Belgariad.
Well, yeah, a lot of people do.
But he's really, really good at it.
He's had a lot of practice.
This is true.
Yeah. So, anyway, it's in the Vale that we come across, I believe it's one of your favorite scenes in the whole series.
It really is. It makes me laugh every time. They get to the Vale, and Garion has a long talk with his grandfather about, his responsibility and learning what to do, and he asks Belgariad, what was the first thing he did? And Belgariad tells him he moved a rock. So Garion decides he's going to try to move this rock too. And this is the first time he's actually sat down and tried to think his way through something. So he decides to move this rock, and he ends up burying himself up to the armpits in the ground.
Right.
Trying to push this rock. Or actually, he tried to lift it up from the bottom and make it roll over instead of pushing on it from the top. And he doesn't realize this until he stops and sets his chin down on the ground.
Yeah, and he's basically sunk straight down because the force of trying to push up on the rock just shoved him down.
Yeah. He apparently has no understanding of basic physics.
Well, no. Well, considering he just learned how to read, I mean,
Oh, we skipped the cave.
Did we skip? Wait, or does the cave come later?
No,
No,
the
because they
cave.
have the cult already. You're right. Oh,
Yes.
shoot. Okay, well, let's back up. Before they get to the Vale, they ran into a lot of really bad weather, and one of the horses that's with them is pregnant. And so Hedder especially is really concerned since he's, an Algar in the Shadar, and he can talk to the horses and communicate with them, and as such, he really, really cares about the horses more so than any of the other characters. Garion knows about this cave. He's like, yeah, there's a cave right around the corner here, and everybody's like, how in the world do you know there's a cave? And he's like, I don't know, but there's a cave. So they finally find it, and now, did Belgarath say that it was the cave where the gods met when they were creating the world?
Yes,
Is that what it
he
is?
said they had been looking for it for years, but none of them had ever found it.
Right.
So they didn't know it still existed. But Garion could open the door with his hand. I mean, Big Barrett couldn't even grab a hold of it and make the door budge, but all Garion had to do was close his hand or open his hand, and the door would open or close.
Yeah.
So they go in there, and Silk, of course, there's like bowls of what looks like fruit on this table, and of course Silk can't leave it alone.
No.
And almost gets in trouble.
Oh, that's Silk for you.
Yeah. And Polgara is trying to deliver this foal. Well, they finally do, but it's stillborn.
Right.
Because, the labor took so long that it ended up being stillborn. Well, Sinedra is mad because she said they didn't try hard enough to save it. And Garion takes it upon himself to bring the colt back to life. And Polgara and Belgarath kind of freak out about this because it's not supposed to be possible.
Right. And the other thing, too, is they were saying that if you try, with the will and the word, if you try to do something that is really, really difficult, I mean, we can't say it's impossible because, you're not allowed to use that word around Belgarath especially.
Yeah.
But if you try and do something that's really, really difficult like this, and you commit your full force to it, it can completely drain you. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why they were scared of having, I mean, they wouldn't have even attempted trying to bring the cult back to life because if you try and do something like that, or like Belgarath says, if somebody's dead, then usually there's a reason for it, whether it's because there's a sword that's like through their heart or something, and so you can't usually summon enough energy to bring somebody back and actually have them stay. But somehow Garion does this, and he describes it as seeing this big black wall and trying to move through it or past it or something. Which Garion is, or Belgarath is really surprised. He's like, I don't understand how you're able to grasp these really big, complicated concepts so easily, and yet smaller things kind of give you trouble.
Right.
But again, these big things you seem to understand. But anyway, so yes, back to where we were. Garion has to try and tell the colt to go get Hedder or somebody to get him out of the ground because he's buried up to his armpits, and as such he has no way to try and like push himself out of the ground.
Yeah, he's just stuck. And it's so funny because when Hedar and Silk finally do come along, they kind of make fun of him.
Oh, how could you not?
They're like, do you think he's done doing his sorcerer things? Maybe we should come back later.
Yeah. And they're like, well, not sure exactly how he did it, but what's even a bigger question is why did he do it? And then the other one's like, oh, I'm sure it's something that we would never understand. It's one of those sorcerer things.
Yeah, it was just hilarious, and Garian is just like, would you please just help me?
You just get me out of here. But yeah, that's a really funny scene. And like you, it's one of the ones that always just makes me chuckle a little bit. Another one that makes me chuckle is a little bit later, um, in this book. But anyway, they decide after this, I believe it's after this, that they're going to go to Ulgo.
Yes, they have to pick somebody up there.
Yes. And so now the Ulgos, it's another place in the land of the Belgariad, but it's a little bit different because the Ulgos, when the world was formed and all of the people were basically split apart, the Ulgos didn't have a god to look after them.
No.
And so basically they bullied one of the gods, whose name is Ol, into taking them on. And the Ulgos live underground in caves, and their country or their land is also filled with, well, monsters, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So basically, everything that didn't have a god of its own came to Ulgo, and like they meet this one creature called an Eldrak,
Yeah.
which, and it's more intelligent than just like a monster. I mean, it talks, it thinks, it strategizes more. I mean, it took pretty much all of our group here to take it down, and it was just one of them.
Yeah.
But when they get to the main city and they go down into the caves of, oh, is it Prolgu?
Pragu, I guess.
I could never pronounce it right, but when they go down there, they meet the Gorum, who is the leader, and he's a very old man, and they've been waiting for a new baby to be born that's going to have something special with its eyes, and that indicates that it's going to be the next Gorum. But so far, the baby hasn't shown up yet. And while they're there, they tell the Gorum that they need a diviner, which in their society, a diviner is somebody who is able to find caves.
Right.
Basically how it was described. And the Gorum's like, oh, that's really not a good idea because all of the diviners are kind of religious fanatics, and everybody's kind of waiting on bated breath for the next Gorum to be born, and you're not going to find one of them that's going to want to go with you because they're going to throw a fit.
Right. And well, and Belgarath even goes as far as to tell him he needs a specific one. Yeah. He needs Relg. And he's like, yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah, he's not going to like that at all. And so Relg shows up, and he is livid that there are these filthy strangers in his city, and the Gorum is daring to tell them the history of the Ulgos, and, you know, how dare he even consider letting this trash into their holy place.
Yeah, he's just, wow, totally just tore up.
Yeah. I mean, full-on religious fanatic tantrum, basically. Which prompts another holy visitation from Ul himself, who basically shows up and gives him the smackdown.
Yeah, and also, this is the scene where that set off the argument in the tavern between me and Strider about whether or not Sinedra deciding to stay in Ulgo while everyone else went on. Basically, what it is, the meeting between Garian and Torak was an event, and this is in all capital letters, event. It's a very important thing, and there are these basically milestones that show up in the prophecies, and the final event happens at the end of the Mallorean, and it's a choice by the Seeress of Kel, yada yada. But there's a whole series of events that take place over the course of these novels, and when you look back at the Belgariad with that knowledge, you can kind of start picking out where these events took place in the series, even though it really wasn't explained then.
Right.
And I've always felt like that Sinedra choosing to stay in Olgo rather than being forced to stay
Uh-huh.
was an event, because it's also explained in either Belgarath the Sorcerer or Belgariad the Sorceress that these events are instantaneous and they're almost always a choice.
Uh-huh.
And the argument was Strider tried to say that she didn't choose to stay, that it wasn't an event, and but I think it was. We're told over and over that when you have these tasks, if you're part of this prophecy, like Dernick is the man with 2 lives, and Sinedra's the queen of the world, and Garian's the child of light, and all this, if you're part of that prophecy, then you can't do your task wrong. It grows out of who and what you are.
Right.
And it says that Sinedra recognized the authority that Ul carried
Mm-hmm.
and chose to bow to that authority
Right.
and stay in Olgo. And I think that's part of her being raised as an imperial princess. Yes, she wheedled and begged and pouted and screamed and tried to get her way, but she understood that at the end of the day, you respect authority.
Right.
So I think that kind of explains it growing out of who and what she was. Because at that moment in time, she was vulnerable. And I think she had to choose to stay willingly, or things would have worked out completely differently.
Right. And I think I've just pulled up the tavern post here, and I'll go ahead and post a link to the specific thread in the show notes for this episode. But one thing that, let's see, I think it was Vector that brought this up, is that one thing that would say that this was definitely an event was because Ul does show up and kind of put Relg in his place and tells him, I didn't tell you to exalt yourself. I told you that you were going to help bring forth the new child, but I didn't tell you to exalt yourself because of it. I didn't tell you to challenge the Gorum, who is the leader of your people. But the real reason that I am here, it's not for this. The real reason that I have come here is to speak to Sinedra. That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And in fact, the quote is, "It is to speak with thee that I have come, my daughter." Ul said directly to her then, his tone and face grew serious. So that would at least it would make me think that that was something more than just, you're going to hang out here for a bit and they're going to go off and do something and then everything's going to be fine. If especially when you find out exactly who Ul is at the end of all of this, he's not just a god.
Right.
He's actually the father of the gods. So
right. He's kind of the head honcho.
He's a big deal. So the fact that he's the one who comes specifically to ask Sinedra to stay, because I don't even think he commands her. I think he tells her, he asks her to, and she says yes.
Well, he tells her that, okay, I found it.
Okay.
It says, "Thou must abide here when thy companions depart. Do not venture into the kingdom of the Murgos, for if it should come to pass that thou makest this journey into Rakthal, thou shalt surely die." And that was part of Strider's argument, that if you tell somebody, if you go, you'll die, that's effectively taking their choice away from them. I'm like, no, it's not. Because she was convinced. Cyrodiil tells them that one of their companions is going to die in the Mallorean, but they all go anyway.
That's true. That's a good point.
That's not taking your choice away from you. That's just basically giving you your options. You can stay and live, or you can go and die.
Right.
You still have to decide.
Yeah. And because you could decide, even knowing that you were going to die, you could still choose to go and fight with your friends and try and protect them. And if you give your life to that cause, well, then that was your choice to do it. Right. So, and not necessarily that Sinedra was brave enough to make that choice, although she's a pretty tough cookie.
Yeah, especially later on.
Yeah, she's still pretty immature right now, but she grows up when she needs to. Once she stops thinking that it's all about her, and she realizes exactly how serious everything really is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and two, you only need one example of how things could have gone completely differently to prove that this was a fairly monumental decision on her part. Had she been forced to stay, it's entirely possible she would have blamed Garion, and they never would have been able to reconcile their differences.
Right.
And then they would have never have, been happy when they were married. There would never have been an heir to the Revan throne. There's so much that could have gone wrong had it not been her choice to stay.
Right.
And the reason she's vulnerable is because at that time, the prophecies, there's a dark prophecy and a light prophecy. At that time, the dark prophecy did not need her. There was no place for her in that prophecy.
Right.
There was no place for her in the outcome. That's why she was the one who was vulnerable. Everybody else had a place in both prophecies. So they were safe. The dark prophecy needed them as well. And he also made the argument that, when these events happen, there's always an indication, a bell of some kind or something in that shows that it's an event. And I was like, okay, well, by that logic, later on in the series, when when Arion and Horse meet, there's that ringing tone and a dun in Garion's head. I'm like, if Arion meeting Horse was an event, why can Sinedra deciding to stay in Olgo not be one?
That's true. But now, was there that bell tone thing happening when she did that, though?
No, but like I said, we're not in everybody's head. We're in Garion's. We don't know that.
That's true.
It might not have been as obvious to Sinedra because, she's not as directly connected with prophecy, but we don't know that she didn't feel a profound sense of, I made the right choice, when she decided to stay. We're not in her head. We don't know what happened.
That's true. It could have been there.
And, it's explained, too, that the child of light always has companions, and the child of dark always acts alone.
Right.
And in a way, they're all the child of light. So I think it's very possible that that sense of, right was with Sinedra at the time. We wouldn't have heard it in Garion's head or Polgara's or anybody else's.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm a firm believer that her choice to stay in Olga was a pretty significant event.
Yeah, I'm going through more of the thread here. It's a really interesting discussion going back and forth here. So I'm definitely going to post this link to this thread in the show notes so other people can find it easily, because it's really interesting. Considering the fact that they do end up going to Rakthal, and that was part of why they needed Relg, because they had heard of a bunch of caves being underneath the city, and they thought that would be the easiest way to get in there. Mm-hmm. And they eventually do get in there, and that's where they find Taiba.
Yes.
Who shocks Belgariad nearly out of his senses, and he's thinking, how on earth did we find her after all of this time? Because Taiba is a Merag.
Who are supposed to be, extinct.
And when they were going through these caves underneath Rakthal, they were basically dungeons and slave pens, because the whole city had been built by pretty much every slave that the Niacins would sell them. And
yeah.
She had managed to escape and hadn't gotten very far, but was planning on trying to go and kill the Grolam High Priest. She never makes it, but
it turns out to be not necessary.
Also true. But they find her, and they promise to come back for her. But they end up going up through these dungeons until they get up to the top of the city. Now, after they've fought several Grolums at this point, and they've taken their big black robes, and so they're kind of in disguise and going through the caves, and they come out into the city. And now we're coming up on one of my favorite scenes, and that's when they run into Brill again.
Yes.
And we had found out that Brill he's not just a common, footpad. He's actually one of the Dagashi, which are an elite force, basically of assassins.
Yeah.
And that's why he's been following them. And his real name isn't Brill, it's Kordok, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, they find him, or he finds them. They find each other. And he and Silk fight while, doing what they usually do in these type of stories, having this whole conversation talking about, oh, you might be just as good as you say you are, and all this other stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But eventually, Silk is able to throw Brill off the top of the tower. And Belgariad turns up and he was like, what happened? And Silk is like, oh, this has happened. Or no, Garion tells him. And Belgariad says, what is Brill doing here? And Silk says, well, he was trying to fly last time I saw him.
Yeah.
And
he's like, oh, he wasn't doing it very well.
He wasn't doing a very good job. And all of a sudden they hear a thud, and then another one, and then another one. And Silk goes, does bouncing count?
Yeah.
And Belgariad says, I don't think so. And Silk's like, well, I guess he didn't learn, or something like that. But it was just funny. Every time I read the phrase, does bouncing count? I don't know, it just makes me giggle.
Yeah.
Because it's such a Silk thing to say.
Yeah, it really is, because they're just like, okay, I've just hurled a guy over the cliff. We're going to stand here and, be clever.
Yeah. Well, he is Drasnian.
Well, this is true. But yeah, that's one of the funnier scenes in the series.
Well, and this is leading up to kind of a pretty major, I guess, now this would definitely, I think, be an event when Belgariad fights Tuchik.
Yeah.
But another thing that I think is pretty significant here, I don't think it's an event, but it's pretty significant, is when Garion sees the truth of what the Angarak religion is and what it would mean if Torak was ever able to wake up and take control of the orb and, by extension, the rest of the world. Yeah. Because we knew that the Angaraks practice human sacrifice, and we've had a rough explanation of what that entails. But they've basically snuck into the Grollam temple and still pretending to be Angaraks in their hooded robes and everything, because they're going to find the Grollam high priest, and they know that he's the one who has the orb, but they still don't know exactly how anybody was able to touch it, because it's supposed to destroy whoever touches it, except for the Revan king,
right,
who was, the line of kings in Riva had been extinct. And so Garion, when he's going through here, they actually see how everything happens. And he feels physically sick by what he sees. And you just have all of these, just tons and tons of people who are basically being butchered and having their hearts cut out. It's gruesome. It's disgusting, and
the voice has to tell Garion not to interfere, because Garion draws in his wheel and is about to, eradicate this off of the face of the earth.
Yeah, he's really, really strongly affected, and like you said, the voice has to say, no, if you do that, we will be swarmed over, we will all be killed, and we have more important things to do right now. Don't worry. What we're doing is going to directly affect what's going on here. This is not going to last. That's part of what we're doing. But now is not the time. So Garion reluctantly goes along with it, which I was actually proud of him at that point. He's starting to grow up a little bit.
Yeah.
And so they finally make their way down to where Tuchik is. And they find out that Zedar had used a child to take the orb.
An innocent. The orb won't strike an innocent.
Right. And because I think they even talked about that, because it was somebody, the only people who could touch the orb were someone who was pure. And, well, purity and innocence, that's pretty close. So that's why this little boy was able to do it. And the little boy doesn't talk. Or he only really says one word, and that's errand. And according to what Tuchik says, he doesn't really know much about this kid. He knows that Zedar found him somewhere and told the kid that he had an errand for him to do.
Right.
And so that's what the kid just started saying, is errand, errand, everywhere. And the kid is able to touch the orb. Nobody else can. In fact, the kid doesn't really seem to understand how serious touching the orb is.
How dangerous it is.
No, he has no idea. And so basically what happens at this point is there's big, huge fight. Big wizard battle between Belgariad and Tuchik.
Yeah, we hadn't had one of those yet.
No.
We were overdue.
Yeah, no, we didn't. It was a doozy. But they end up fighting. And at first, Tuchik is like, oh, well, you've done so well trying to assemble the prophecy, and here's this person, and here's that person, and here's, Belgarian, who's, this, I wasn't expecting him to be here. And then I remember him saying something about he was really looking forward to paying respect to the Queen of the World.
Yeah.
Which is Sinedra's role in the prophecy. And the whole time, Belgariad is like, she's very well. She sends her regards, And Tuchik's like, you wouldn't leave her anywhere because she's not going to be safe anywhere. So I know she's here, and she's the one who's vulnerable. So, where is she? Is she hiding, around the corner? Where is she? And Belgariad is like, did you really not even check and make sure she was with us before letting me get this close to you?
Yeah.
Are you really that much of an idiot?
Apparently.
Turns out he is.
Really is.
Or just that arrogant. So yeah, Tuchik is kind of chagrined a little when he finds out that Sinedra is an Ulgo, because he knows there's no way possible for him to get her there.
Right, because she's under the protection of Ulg.
Yeah. You're not going to go up against him. That's a bad idea.
Yeah. That's suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about putting a smackdown on somebody.
Yeah. But,
so
anyway, their big, huge wizard battle. And in the midst of all of this, Erend tries to give the orb to Garion. And Garion's like, well, I can't touch the orb, no, because that's how the orb will destroy me. But Tuchik sees Erend giving Garion the orb, or trying to, and he freaks out.
Yeah,
and
completely.
Actually tries to unmake the orb.
And that's a big no-no. That's the only thing you're not allowed to do with sorcery, is unmake anything.
Yes. Because I believe the way Palgera explained it is that everything is dependent upon everything else in the universe. Right. And so if you were to unmake one thing, now it's not the same as destroying something. I mean, because Garion, I think he even brings up, well, I destroyed Asherak. And they're like, no, you didn't destroy him. You burned him.
You killed him.
And he died. But, the matter that was him still exists. It's just, a pile of ash now.
Yeah, it's in a different form.
Yeah. All you really did was change him, but you didn't actually will him out of existence. There's a difference there. And so you're not allowed to do that, because the way, if everything is interdependent, if you were to unmake one thing, then there is the possibility that everything would be destroyed and come apart. And we can't have that. So it's kind of a built-in safety mechanism that if you try to unmake something, your will turn itself in on you, and you will be the one that is destroyed. Which is what happens to Tuchik.
Yeah, because he sees the little boy about to hand the orb to Garion, and he just screams, "Be not!" And I think that was actually the event here, is him choosing to try to prevent the orb from getting to Garion. Him choosing to scream "Be not" was the event there.
Right.
Because that was what had the most monumental effect.
Yeah, it tears apart the tower.
Yeah, it kind of destroys the whole city.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a big cataclysmic thing. And they barely, the book ends with them barely able to get out, and they're fleeing back into the caves. Now, Belgarath has been knocked unconscious. So basically, they're carrying him. We don't know if Belgarath is okay. And Garion has run in and rescued Erend, who's still like waving the orb around like it's a child's toy. And
yeah,
you know, everybody kind of goes a little nuts with that because they're like, you just don't put that away. Quit doing that. But that's basically where this book ends, is them fleeing for their lives from this tower that's falling apart. And that's it.
Yeah.
So it kind of ends right in the middle of this big action sequence.
Talk about a cliffhanger.
Yeah, literally, they're almost like falling off a cliff.
Yep. So they have to, in the next book, they're going to go back and find the married woman and try to, get completely out of the city.
Yeah. So there's a lot more to do.
Oh, yeah, we still got 3 more books to go. There's a whole lot more to do.
No, we have 2 more.
2, yeah, 2. I can't count. Sorry.
That's okay. But, yeah, so there is a lot left to do. There's a lot going on, which we're going to talk about in the next 2 episodes. So next episode will be book 4.
Castle of Wizardry.
It's Castle of Wizardry. And then their final episode for the Belgariad will be Enchanter's Endgame. But I wanted to go ahead and talk about the announcements that I had. And this is something that I have come across. We had talked about with our Eddings Palooza about having another giveaway. And so I finally can say what we're going to give away.
Folks, I'm in the dark about this too, so.
Yeah, well, I found something that, and like dirt cheap found something. Otherwise, I don't know necessarily that we would do this, but I was quite pleased with finding this. We are going to have another giveaway, and what we have to give away this time is one of the omnibus editions, Volume 1 of the Belgariad.
Ooh!
Now, it's the paperback edition, and this has books 1 through 3 in it. So you're going to have Pawn of Prophecy, Queen of Sorcery, and Magician's Gambit.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, seriously, I found it in really good condition for like nothing. I got really lucky on this one. So, yeah, we're going to go ahead and do that for the giveaway. Now, if you want to enter the contest, do so by April 24th. That's a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Which should give us plenty of time to pick a winner before we record for the last episode, which will be on the 28th.
Yeah.
So, like last time, if you want to enter for the giveaway, you can do it in a couple different ways. You can either email us, and we'll just use the name Garion. So that's Garion in the subject line of the email. You can also tweet the name Garion to us at BibAnonPodcast. Or you can go to our official website at Bibliophiles-Anonymous.com and leave the word or the name Garion in the comments of any of the Eddings Palooza episodes, any of the posts. So by then there'll be like 4 of them. So that's how you enter. And then on the last episode on the 28th, we will announce the winner, and then we will contact the winner and get your mailing information and all of that stuff.
Yay! Giveaway.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I want new people to read these books. I mean, they've been out for 30. Well, Pawn of Prophecy's been out for 31 years.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a whole generation of readers out there that have never read these.
Right.
That have no idea that they exist, and that's why I like the idea of the new covers that they've done in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Rebecca doesn't like them. She thinks they're weird, which they are kind of different, but they're colorful and bright, and they appeal to that younger generation. To those kids who go into a bookstore and are used to seeing, like, Harry Potter covers that are bright and colorful.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like the idea of having new re-released covers like that.
Well, and that was one reason why I was really excited to find this, is because originally I think we had talked about possibly just doing a giveaway with the first book,
Yeah.
on a prophecy. But this one will actually give you a pretty good jump on the whole series, just in case if for some reason you can't find the other ones right away. Now you'll have the first 3 books, get you a good start into it. So definitely go ahead and enter into the giveaway. And like I said, do it by April 24th, and then we'll announce the winner for the episode on the 28th when we talk about Enchanter's Endgame.
I have the hardback omnibus editions that I got from the Science Fiction Book Club. One of the 3 times I've been a member. Because they're like, please join. So I join, and I'll fulfill my commitment, and then they'll delete me. And then they send me another, please join. So I join, and I don't even get a chance to fulfill my commitment, and they remove me. And then they start again, please join. And I'm like, make up your minds, people. But one of the last times I joined, I got the hardback omnibus versions of the Belgariad, and I have the paperback omnibus versions of the Mallorean. So I've kind of, I haven't actually read the omnibus versions of the Belgariad. I don't know why I'm reading the individual paperbacks. I completely forgot I even had the hardbacks. But I'm reading my, I guess because this is the new set that I bought and I haven't read them and they've never been read and I thought they needed to be read, I guess. I don't know.
Well, sure.
But I've read my omnibus Mallorean. Usually when I read the Mallorean, I read those because I don't have to make as many trips to the bookshelf.
Anyway, so yeah, I think that's going to do it for our show tonight.
I think that'll get us.
Yeah. So join us next week when we talk about Castle of Wizardry.
Hopefully I will actually, finish Magician's Gambit and read Castle of Wizardry before then.
Well, for not reading it, you did a really good job.
Well, when you've read them as much as I have, you kind of know a lot about them. But I would really like to actually read it before we do the podcast because I remember it better if I've read it recently.
Right.
So I'm almost done with Queen of Sorcery, though, and Magician's Gambit is one of the shorter books.
Yeah.
So I should be able to get through it and at least most of Castle of Wizardry.
Right. Well, if any of you out there have read these books or you're reading them along with us, please let us know and join in the discussion a bit. Like I said, we have a couple of threads up at the Mallorean Tavern, and that web address is www.maltavern.com. I am going to link up the what is an event thread, but if you go there, there is a whole room dedicated to David Eddings. It's called Alder's Tower. So head on over there and you can tell us what you like about the books, what you don't like about the books. You can also email us, bibliophiles.podcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter, like I had said before, BibAnonPodcast, or join in the comments over at our official website. And like I said, don't forget about the giveaway.
Yes, enter. We really want to give this to somebody.
Yes. So feel free to do that, like I said, on our website, on Twitter, or through email. Lots of ways to enter, and do so by the 24th.
Yes.
So I think that's it.
if there's anything you would like to start a discussion about at the tavern that we haven't mentioned, feel free.
Go for it.
And there is a casting call thread over there, because we all have ideas about who we would pick to play these characters if there was ever a movie or a miniseries made. And I think we're going to try to discuss that on our last episode after we finish discussing Enchanter's Endgame.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping we can get Tim and Rebecca back for that one.
That would be fun.
Because Tim definitely has some ideas about who has to play these roles. But it's okay, because so do I.
Yeah, well, yeah. I know you do. I don't have as many strong opinions as some, so that would be fun if we could get them to come back on.
Yeah, it really would.
But anyway, so I think that's going to do it for tonight.
Yep, we will see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.